Well, this is a topic that I've been kind of thinking about a lot lately. Is the topic of classic rock bands, sharing them with new generations, helping immortalize their music because they had such a massive impact on the rock music we have today, you know? And so for me personally, it was a close subject because when I did my Pink Floyd reaction, there was a huge chunk of comments that were like, "You've never heard of Pink Floyd? There's no way you're a rock musician." And I kind of started thinking about that. Like, you treat people who haven't heard Pink Floyd before like this, it's gonna decrease the number of people who actually want to listen to
I'm just
them. And slowly over time, they're just gonna keep shrinking, 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 and peter out,
Can I insert
because in
something
a
real
hundred
quick?
years, there's gonna be a whole new set of people on Earth.
You brought up a really good point. I never even thought about the fans are doing the same thing that the blockers are doing, technically, right? Is
Yeah.
what you're getting at,
Well,
kind of?
yeah, just a small minority of them, but like because that Pink Floyd video, got so many views, it had a lot of those comments like, "You're not a rock musician." And I was like, okay, why why would I want to do another reaction to it? But that said, we know like
gatekeeping.
reactions have such a huge impact on music spreading now, and fans of that music uniting, getting together, and also sharing new bands, new music with people. And taking that and then listening to Rick Beato's new video here, he mentions a lot of interesting stuff about bands that are blocking reactions, and also something Marty Friedman said when they were riding in the car that he didn't mention during the interview, but I thought was the perfect way to explain this. So now just let Rick take it away.
nearly 13.5 million monthly listeners. That tells you that Jimi Hendrix isn't even close to that at 9.3 million. He's probably not in the top 1,000. That's hard to imagine, right? And I've said this before that Jimi Hendrix is being forgotten. Same with AC/DC, and I think the same with the Beatles. When I started my channel, when I would mention the Beatles, people loved Beatles videos. They did. I'm a huge Beatles fan.
I'm obsessed with Rick Beato videos on YouTube.
Wait, who's this?
Rick Beato.
I don't know who that is.
He's a music producer. He's a Beatles fan, so there's a lot of shit ton of Beatles in there. But
Renee hates it when I talk about the Beatles. Now, some bands retain their coolness even if they haven't released a record, like Nirvana or ABBA, 27.8 million monthly listeners. Huge. Queen, huge. And they've done it either without their lead singer. Kurt Cobain has been gone since 1994. That's almost 30 years. But when Kurt Cobain died, he was immortalized at 27 years of age. The thing is that kids really connect with the music. But do kids necessarily connect with the Beatles? I don't think so. I know why the Eagles will be forgotten. Their blocking policy is ridiculous. Don Henley seems to think it doesn't work.
The notice and takedown system of the DMCA does not work.
Trust me, any Eagles video will get taken down immediately. The net effect of blocking people from actually talking about their music or even doing tutorials on the Eagles, just like you cannot do tutorials on Guns N' Roses. Otherwise, they will block you. What is the sense in that? As time has moved on over these 7 years, I've noticed the Beatles' influence waning. People in the comment section, oh, I don't want to hear about the Beatles.
And I just want to mention, so yeah, because it shocks me, like, Wave, when I ask you about some bands that you don't know. And like, I think I use you as an example of yes, there's some people that don't know some of the bands. Because I guess I was pretty ignorant into assuming that people would just know, like, Jimi Hendrix or like I brought up the Beatles to someone. They're like, "Who's that?" I'm like, I was fucking shocked. I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Somebody said, "Who's that?" I was like, Steppenwolf too was like another one. I don't think they get blocked, but just in general, they're being forgotten about since nobody's like talking about them or whatnot. And
yeah, and just to hear the other side, like, I would be shocked too if someone didn't know who the Beatles were, because they were one of the most formative bands to me. They were the first classic rock band I ever heard.
So
sorry to interrupt.
I want to throw something in there too. So I have so many thoughts on this, but I'm going to try my best to hold on to most of them until the end of this. But before he moves on from this, I just want to say there's this element where I completely agree with everything that he's saying so far. By the way, I just want to throw that out there. But what I've come to notice is that it's not just down to how the music is being gatekeeped or the blocking and stuff like that. I've found that there is a genuine disinterest from my son's generation in exploring that music anyway. So while I agree that what he's saying, it is affecting it negatively, like the ability to keep these bands around, I honestly don't know how much would change, even if there was like this huge explosion of being allowed to hear anything that you want on YouTube and no blocks, no copyrights, nothing like that. I am not sure that there would even be that much of a dramatic difference in what the current
I think
generation would be listening to.
I think there would be actually, champ, because for example, it was that famous bassist, right? He's on the younger end, right? Right Wave. I can't remember his name. He's like an amazing bassist who did like a cover of, I think it was Hotel California, and he did it completely.
Oh yes,
bass.
Charles Bertown.
He has a lot of young audience that would go check out the.
And those people are already listening to rock music. Those people have already explored. They've already gone down the path. They know who Guns N' Roses is. They know who Led Zeppelin is.
But at least somebody's listening to
but you'd think that, but look at all the stuff I don't know. Yeah. Even though I've been in the rock music scene for 20 years.
You've heard of Guns N' Roses, though.
Well, like if
I asked you if you knew who Led Zeppelin was,
listens to, did you share with them?
All of it, like all the rock stuff.
He has you to share with him.
Yeah, but that's not going to change parents. Like parents, if they want to show their kids that music, they're doing that already. Like the idea that things are getting blocked or gatekept is not preventing the parents from showing the children the music that they loved.
I think the point is like, for example, I've been doing some more hip hop stuff, which has been pulling in audiences from a different realm, and if they're a fan of you, they're going to listen to the other music you listen to, so that's why you get that cross-pollination. Like
that's true. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't change at all. I'm just saying that I think it would be more minimal than we're thinking right now. And I'm going to stop now because we're going to talk about this a little bit later when we go into the other video that we're talking about.
Well, I just want to say, Champ, to your point, you make a good point there, because growing up as a kid, I got some of my musical influence from my parents. You know, their records and cassette tapes, me and my brother would listen to those. So I think a lot of this is actually, there is that component of the generational factor, you know, what your friends, what your parents listen to influences you. But now that we live in this digital age, what I'm seeing from some of these older bands, and it even happens in Japan, we've seen this with a lot of the Japanese companies, it's really that old guard of the business. They don't quite understand what it is that's happening here, and they just think, oh, that is a potential loss of revenue, so we got to shut it down. I don't think the lawyers, especially who work in the industry, I don't think they see how there's a monetary upside to this, because sometimes I'll ask some industry insiders, and you really kind of have a mix between, there's marketing people who are like, yeah, we love it, reactions are great. But then you got the legal department who's like, nope, shut it down, we're losing money, shut it down. You know, so you have that fighting that's going on with some of these artists and their labels.
That's really funny, I agree with that also. They copyright claim all of the reactions and they get the revenue from them. So if they're not getting it from the original music video, they're still getting it from all the reactions.
Yeah, like,
dude, I wonder how much of a conversation there actually is, how much communication there actually is between like management, YouTube copyright people, like the band themselves. Like how many levels does it have to go through to get to the band that they know exactly how much revenue they're getting from everything? You know what I mean? Like they have third parties handling a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I doubt they're even hyper aware of the upside or the downside in allowing, you know, stuff to go
it's
through.
like, I was talking about this just recently, like Bandmaid's like crushing it because everybody films their shows and stuff and they get a share of all those little videos. So guys, that's such a great way to support the band, especially since you know Bandmaid won't block it. That's a really good example of a band that is just like capitalizing it. So post every single Bandmaid video you have, because they're going to get a cut, which is amazing. And the more you guys watch it, the more I was thinking about that the other day. That's what they're probably super excited to come back to the US also, as they're going to have even more exposure that way. And they're like doing it perfectly. You know, I think it's just the right way to go about it. Where there's some other Japanese bands like Maximum Hormone, somebody mentioned in the chat, you know, they block some of their videos and it's like, it's insane, you know.
But they are young enough. See, the problem that I have with like them is that they are young enough and aware enough of the upside of the revenue stream that comes through the copyright claims on YouTube that they should be able to know better.
No,
you know, I don't blame like the Eagles. You know, they don't
Yeah.
know. They're old. They don't know what the fuck's going
Well,
on.
do they not have
you know?
kids? Do they not have children?
Well,
Do
I'm
you?
sure that they do, but like, listen, though, I'm 37 and I'm done learning new shit. You know what I mean? Like if I'm
all
I'm
right.
like 70 and I've been playing music and making money the same way through that career, like for the last 40 years, I don't know how much I'm paying attention to
you
like
know what,
YouTube
Champ?
copyright claims.
Champ, you're right. You're right. Because for me, I'm not done learning shit. I've always been in the mindset.
I was just
keep
joking about
learning,
that,
keep learning.
but you know what I'm saying.
No, I believe you. I believe you though. We just found out about 48 states in the continental U.S. Okay.
See, we learned.
Yeah, we got to keep learning.
We learned.
Can't stop learning.
Let's get back to
You got to learn something new every day. You really do. I mean, it's what life is all about, realistically speaking.
Right.
Like Rick Beato's channel, except he always talked about the Beatles. I never thought the Beatles would go out of style. And people think that Guns N' Roses won't go out of style or AC/DC, but they will. They will. There's too much new music out there that young people want to consume that is made by their contemporaries, by other young people. I had Marty Friedman in here recently, and something he said to me when I was driving him down to his show that he didn't say in my interview with him. He said, you know, new music is just getting newer and old music is getting older. And I said, Marty, why didn't you say that in the interview? He said, because I just thought of it. He's so right. New music is getting newer, meaning there's constantly new things coming out by contemporary artists, by young artists. And the further this music gets in the past, you can't even make enough videos about this. And it kind of gets to a point.
Going to Champ's point, pretty much exactly what Champ was saying. In essence,
it's just so busy out there. You know what I mean? Like they have the last 20 years to work through before they get to the last 30 years and the last 40 years. While like when we look back at like learning what classic rock was when we were teenagers or whatever, that was like 20 to 30 years ago. But I mean, now it's what, 50, 60 years ago? Like they got decades of music
and
in
now with the
between there
internet.
and now.
Yeah, but now with the internet and like for us, we're listening to all this Japanese music. Now it's like almost impossible to keep going back. Right?
Oh yeah,
You
you can't even
Mhm.
keep up with new Japanese music.
That's the thing. Like, I want to listen to all the new music that comes out in the like Japanese metal and rock world, but I've missed out still on so much of their past music. Like, I don't have the time to catch up on all that shit. So I get where they're coming from and why it's difficult for the new generations to want to go all the way.
I want to
back
say
into that
too,
area.
with all the music that I've been listening to now, it's actually affected my listening of older music that I want to listen to. There's some music, older music I used to listen to, I just don't anymore. Like Korn's a great example. I have no interest in listening to any Korn songs, which I used to love that band, but I can't go back and listen to them. I'm like done. You know what I mean? It's just interesting. Or like Limp Bizkit, I just stopped listening to. So that's another thing. There's some older bands
but give
that I'll keep
give
listening
that
to.
another 5-10 years and you might want to go back and listen to it again.
I don't know.
Because the nostalgia will hit you.
Yeah, but only for like one or two songs. I'm not going back like, oh, let me listen to the whole album. You know what I mean?
Bro, I showed my son Limp Bizkit's the one with break stuff and Nookie on it, Significant Other, and he loved it. And I was like, I'm digging this because he's digging it right now.
That's true. That's true.
Well, that's good because for me, like I was thinking about this the other day. I heard a Limp Bizkit song come on, and I was thinking, I used to like them. I'm kind of. They've actually I've soured on them now. I mean, I loved them back in the day. I mean, break stuff, and of course when Nookie hit big. And now I'm kind of like, why did I like that? It's kind of fallen away from me. I don't.
Well, you kind of just
have
you
the
grow out
nostalgia
of you listen to a genre that you like a lot, and then eventually get bored of it, and then you're like, okay, I'm in a different part of my life. It doesn't have the same sentimental value.
I call
that
it
had at that time.
music maturity, maybe to a certain essence. You know, like. I guess we don't think about this, but if you keep listening to new music over a period of years, you just kind of develop newer tastes and newer nuances to your taste in music, compared to somebody that just only listens to one decade, like my dad. He listens to one decade and that's it. Anything out of that decade, he's like, what the hell is this? You know, it's impossible to get him out of it, you know? So I think if you're like constantly open-minded and keep introducing new music, when you go back, you're like, but there's some older bands that stand the test of time, right? Like you go back, listen to it, you're like, oh, I can still listen to this. This is still great, you know?
Yeah. Now, and I just want to be clear also, like, I'm just playing devil's advocate at this point when I say these. Like, I personally feel like I want that stuff to still exist, and I feel like I want everybody to have access to it, and I want the kids to care about it. I'm just not sure how realistic it is for all of those things to come together for any change to ever be made in that area.
Yeah, like my mom is a fan of, she grew up on Elvis Presley, and every time an Elvis Presley song comes on, I don't turn it off. I love Elvis. Maybe it's also the relation between, in fact, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and Elvis being Memphis, Tennessee. But I think it was last year, or the year before last, they did a movie about Elvis,
Mhm.
and it was unique. It was done by the director who did Moulin Rouge, and the thing about it was it presented Elvis in a way that also kind of made him hip and contemporary, and it had some contemporary newer artists doing covers of some of Elvis's song. And I mean, it was okay for me. I liked the original stuff, but at least it made me think, okay, I wonder how younger people are when they hear something from so long ago. What do they think
Well,
of it?
Ryan just mentioned this in the chat. He said Limp Bizkit is angsty teenager dumb lyrics that happen to have great musicians. Sadly, all anyone remembers is Durst, because Fred Durst knew to target the younger audience. He knew to do that because you have to target them. Because when you're in school, you're not all about the complexity of the vocals and lyrics. You want something that hits home with you. You want something that hits with your struggles when you're a kid. And that's why people remember Fred Durst, because I remember listening to Limp Bizkit. That was my outlet. I was angry. He was like the perfect person at the time. And then he had Korn and all that stuff. So I think that's why we kind of grew out of him, because when you get older, you're like, oh, I don't want to be pissed off anymore. Right.
So the
Like,
question should be,
yeah.
if that, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So the follow-up is, if that's their target demographic, the angsty teenagers back then,
Yeah.
right? Like, if they perform that same music today for the angsty teenagers, would they have the same sort of connection to it, or do they have a different angst now? You know what I mean?
If they were the same age, if Limp Bizkit was the same age, because you got to remember, Limp Bizkit was very close to the age demographic. They were like in the early 20s. We were 16, 15, right? So to
Right.
us, it's all the same. So if they were the same age, I think it would still work.
All I'm saying,
I
if
think
you
it would
show
still work.
Limp Bizkit's music from that exists already to a current 15-year-old kid,
No, it won't work if you look at it on the visual standpoint, because most people, when they listen to music, they see the artist and everything, and they include the visuals along with the music. So if they see some old guy singing about your teenage struggles, they're gonna be like, "Well, I don't relate," or they're like,
Yeah,
if that connection
100%.
is just off.
I agree.
But if
I'm
put
with
them
you
in-
on this.
If we took their music and made them 20 years old again and put them back, I think they would still be successful.
Because they'd
honestly.
have different struggles. They'd have today's struggles
Yeah.
that they'd be able to relate to the kids.
Fred
But
Durst
they were
was
talented.
smart. Fred Durst was smart behind it all. He knew the target, that audience. He knew what the hell he was doing. He knew where the hole was in the society at the time, and he just drove it home, man. Like, he kept it simple, he kept it understandable, he kept it relatable, and then people were just like like you said, break stuff. When you're a kid, yeah, that's all you want to do. Like I was just talking about, setting fires everywhere, right? Like, it was just really relatable. Like, yeah, I want to fucking break stuff. I'm so pissed.
Yeah,
Like, I'm done with this shit,
It's just one of those days. Every day was one of those days, bro.
Yeah. And then but middle-aged 20-year-old dudes also had that struggle too, right? Losing jobs, trying to work. People just like were pissed off at that time period with the way that things were going. They're shutting down plants and stuff like that. So that's why they had a huge base up north, like in the Midwest and stuff, where people are losing jobs. We all forget about everything that was happening at that time when Limp Bizkit came out. It was just so relatable. You can't
definitely.
get away from it. So probably get back to this video. All right.
That I always talk about with my friends, like, how well can you know an album? I was born when the Beatles were putting out their records, and I experienced them 50 years ago. I didn't have to learn the Beatles if I was born in 1990 or something and go back to music that was made 30 years before I was born, and then try to experience the Rolling Stones and Jimi Hendrix and Black Sabbath and B.B. King and all the music that was made before I existed. Even bands like Nirvana that stopped putting out records in 1993, or maybe they did some releases later. Even that music, if I was born in 1990, would have been music really before I was even aware of the music. And one of the things about being 61 years old now is that I've had time to listen to all these things. I don't have to go back and listen to Steely Dan's records to talk about them. I listened to them 50 years ago, or any of the artists from back then. I was alive when...
And guess what? I only know about Steely Dan because of Rick Beato. I had no clue who that was, by the way. No clue.
Yeah, I know who they are, but also I know this was just making me think, because I showed my son Led Zeppelin a couple weeks ago for the first time, and he couldn't listen to it because the quality of the recording was so poor. And that wasn't the first time that I heard that complaint also. And I think that that's a huge determining factor, you know,
Yep.
compared to what you hear today with the clarity.
Yeah.
Hendrix was alive. You know, I mean, I knew Jimi Hendrix's music when it was coming out. I knew the Beatles' music when it was coming out. When Stairway to Heaven was being played on the radio, it was a new song in 1971. I listened to it. Stones records, everything for back then. All the stuff that happened in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. When I talk about Gordon Lightfoot, I experienced Gordon Lightfoot when it was coming out. When I talk about Nirvana, I was 30 years old. What was I? 29 years old when Nevermind came out. I knew Bleach before that. I was in my 20s.
Was there still more you want me to play off of this wave, or? Because I think he's just gonna go into his.
What's
thing.
it at now?
It's at 6:21. I wasn't sure what time to play to.
I think. Well, I think it was up till 7, and it's
Okay.
I'm contemporaries. Kurt Cobain was born in 1967. I was born in 1962. Eddie Vedder, 1964. Chris Cornell, 1963, something like that. These people are my contemporaries. The guys in the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They've been putting out records since the 80s. And those records I knew back then. The blocking thing. I think people should really rethink them, those artists. I don't know any of these artists. I don't know anyone in the Beatles. I don't know anyone in AC/DC. I don't know anyone in the Eagles. I don't know anyone in Guns N' Roses. I don't know anyone in those bands. But one label that I do know that has changed their blocking policy is ECM Records. ECM Records has changed its blocking policy and gone to demonetization.
That's about it.
All right, Wave, go for it. What do you want to say?
I think I already pretty much said pretty much everything I was thinking about this video. Just, I think this music's really important because it was so influential on what we have today. And had to go way back from when I was born to ever discover it. And I get the quality thing too. I used to feel the same way too, like your son, Champ. But like I feel like as you get older, you start to appreciate the authenticity more of stuff. And so at some point in his life, Led Zeppelin might be really interesting to him because they were so authentic. They were so raw. They didn't use a click track. John Bonham is an absolute monster on drums, he had just such a unique feel, and they were a really influential band for like riff based music and stuff like that. So I want this music to stay alive, and there's just certain things that are happening now that I feel like are really working against that, like blocking and the gatekeepers that inevitably end up in every fan base that are just like kind of nasty to new fans. Yeah. So,
all right,
I think that's about all I have to say.
Anything you guys want to say before we get into the Bandmade update?
I was just going to say good point on that because, I mean, I was just thinking of something that I've always thought about with rock music is that it's like the soundtrack of the every person. It gives you music to lift you up, chill you out, bring you down. The ballads, the heavy stuff, the hard stuff, the soft stuff. It's just, it hits on so many different levels. It's whatever time, whatever phase you're in. And I'm a bit different, Wave. I'm not worried so much about gatekeepers because I think this has always been something in the industry is you've always had times when you had people come in, try to slow things down, but the music has its own life force and it gets out there. And as long as fans, you guys keep talking about it, keep sharing it, it's going to continue. We're kind of in a weird place when you look at like some of the numbers. Rock music is sort of only like a third of the market, even coming behind country music, but still it still stays there. And what's great about it, when I look at some of those stats about where rock music tracks, is it cuts across a lot of demographics. So it doesn't matter who you are. So I think I'm just trying to kind of reinforce my point that I believe this is the song soundtracks, the movement that works for the working man, for the soccer moms, for everybody who just wants that, to feel that rhythm, that classic hard-hitting R&B right to your gut. Rock music is there for you, no matter what particular flavor you like.
Yeah, it can literally be anything. Like I feel like rock music has the largest variety of sounds and topics and everything of any other genre of music, because it's, it's fueled by passion and really, connects to the soul. And I just want to mention why this is so important to me. I know Champ made a good point, sharing music with your kids and stuff. But the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I got into my mid 20s and realized just how much music I hadn't heard. No one had shared it with me. It wasn't passed on to me. And no, I'm not the only one. So if someone isn't sharing that with you, that's why it's so important for us to keep talking about, like you mentioned, Andrew. And if we aren't able to, if they block the music, and or if they have a bad experience on their first time listening with the fan base, that's going to turn them off from that, and it's going to make them not interested in it. Because I know there's a lot of people who haven't heard a lot of these great bands, so that's why I'm so passionate about it.
I agree 100%. I think that blocks shouldn't exist. Obviously, I just think that they should copyright claim all their music so that they can make money off of it. I really honestly don't see the upside of blocking something and blocking new fans away. But I do want to just reiterate that I'm not sure how much the bands of yesteryear are aware of this revenue stream and the possibilities that it could possibly bring. As I assume they've had their management teams and publishers and stuff taking care of this for the last 30 years for them. I don't know how much of a say they have in it themselves, or how much they've even considered it, And just to finally give it off, I want to give hip hop culture a little bit of credit here, because they do keep some of these rock riffs alive by sampling them in music, and the kids go, that's a cool beat, and then find out where it comes from, and it's like, well,
Vanilla Ice.
at least that's one sort of path that they could take to get
Isn't
there.
it funny how Vanilla Ice got so much crap for that, but then like everybody does it?
Everybody does it now. Everybody does it. He should be viewed as a pioneer.
I know, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, he's like technically, you guys, if you didn't know, Vanilla Ice has a really heavy metal album, which is actually pretty decent. During the new metal era, he actually came out with a heavy metal album and redid Vanilla Ice. He redid his like song. What was it called? I already forgot. He called it "Too Cold" in his remix of it, but it was pretty all heavy with screams.
Ice Baby.
Ice Baby. Yeah, he redid that song called "Too Cold," and he put a new metal spin on it. It's actually pretty good.
I know this can sound super dorky, but I saw him live, me and a college buddy of mine, after his fame had kind of died down. He was like the flavor of the year when he went really big, and then it died down. But like, I was in college, and so me and a college bud went to see him. Was like, all right, we'll check out Vanilla Ice. Dude, he rocked it. I mean, he like got into like the audience, and he was just jamming with the crowd. I mean, the dude was straight up an entertainer when I saw him live. So I was kind of surprised that after the fame, he still was just like there for the fans.
I'm not surprised, bro. I think a lot of these people that get really popular, like, and they kind of like have a gimmick or whatever, we don't really realize how talented they actually can be, because they're not showing off all their talents. I mean, I remember the first time I went to see Avril Lavigne after she kind of like came out of her super popular early 2000s thing, and I was like, she went up there, she played piano, she played drums, she played guitar, she sang, she danced, she did all this shit, and I was just like, dude, like, you would have no idea if you just watched like Skater Boy,
Yeah. That's why it's important to watch them live. But bandmate news, guys. Or Wave, you have something?
I just had one more thing I failed to mention, because I didn't get a chance to jut in there after he talked about Marty Freeman's quote about, new music keeps getting newer, old music keeps getting older. And this is another reason, like, this is such an interesting question to me about, will rock and roll survive beyond, 30, 40, 50 years past it when it was made? Because, I guess you guys already brought this up, but we just keep getting more and more new music. And at a certain point, it's impossible to catch up on that old music, because you're listening to what's current, what the people who are actually living in your time are making. And you start to lose any interest in,
dude, anybody on this podcast, name a song from the 40s. Go. Well done. Yeah. I mean,
I got one. I just don't know if it's appropriate to say. No, no.
Say it.
Say
No,
it.
ragtime, or that was actually kind of a genre, the ragtime. No, I mean, like I grew up like on oldie stuff. I mean, I could probably think of like some stuff from the 50s, like I mentioned Elvis. But 40s, yeah, I remember doing some of that stuff in like musicals when I was a kid. It escapes me now, but yeah, good point though. But I mean, it's like, but that was like what was pop in the 40s, and then what was popular in the 50s, 60s. I mean, you go back and look at every decade, and every decade has its flavor, the songs that stand out and represent that decade. And I think it's still true now. If you look back at the last 10 years over what was popular, you know, it was Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift, and those kinds of that type of music. But they always seem to come back to rock. And rock, it just kind of changes. It just becomes another sort of, it takes whatever is out there that's being done popular, and some artists will come along and say, oh, I can tap into this and do my version of it. So
Well,
I'm kind of hopeful that it's going to be around even long after us.
And
Cross
I'd say even
fingers.
beyond what's trending, what's popular, I feel like rock is a genre that doesn't need to be trendy, because trendy stuff dies off fast, and stuff that's genuine and, you know, really driven by passion is, you know, lives on a lot longer, because stuff sounds really dated if it's capitalizing on a trend from that time period, you know, in 10 years.
True. All right, chat is done with us talking about rock, so let's move on to bandmate news.
Yeah,
they
they're
really
gonna-
want bandmate news.
Mikoto's out there dying, apparently.
And this
All
is
right.
why we're talking
Go
about it,
ahead.
because we have this new music.
Hey guys, we got to talk about this rock shit in order for Bandmade to live on anyway. Like they are part of the rock and roll genre.
Yeah,
So
they're gonna be classic rock in
it's
40
all
years.
tied together.
Hey guys, thank you for watching. The Gaijin guys this year are really trying to up our game in the Japanese music news space, so we really rely on our Patreon supporters and our members over here on YouTube, so thank you so much. So if you guys can help, consider becoming a Patreon supporter or a member, and you also get exclusive group reactions from all of the guys. Stay awesome, everyone. See you in the next one. See you!